And then while you grab your seat, I just also want to say welcome. It's really, really great to have you this morning. My name is Jimmy, and I'm one of the pastors here at First Christian. And man, if it's your first time here today, or maybe your second time, or you're just kind of new around here and checking us out, it's an honor to have you here in our house today. And we just want you to feel welcome and know how much we're glad that you're here. We believe Jesus is for everybody. He's for all people. He's for you. He loves you, and he cares about your life. And here's the deal. He wants whatever is happening in your life, Jesus wants it to be better. He wants to take what's going on and he wants to make it better. We started a new series last week, actually built on that idea that Jesus, part of why he came and lived on earth and did everything that he did was to teach us a better way. That's what it's all about. And what we're going to talk about this morning, I think, is something that's incredibly timely. It's incredibly important because it's something I think most of us wrestle with. This message for me, guys, is one of the most personal messages I'll probably ever preach because this is my greatest struggle. My wife is going to be amening a lot of what I have to say today because this is my greatest struggle in my life. And so today, here's the deal. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, okay? We're going to talk about what it looks like to live an unrushed life today, okay? So hang in with me. It's going to be good. If you have a Bible, Matthew 11 is where we're going to be. We'll put it on the screen too, but I'd love for you to turn there. Here's the deal. This message, I just want to tell you, has become even more real for me this morning because we were sitting over here just a minute ago during that last song, and I didn't even realize it, but I was like back and forth and messing with my hands, and Ashley leaned over to me and said, "You're so fidgety right now." I was like, "I could go preach, mind your own business." But she's right, and here's why, okay? So if you've heard a couple loud pops so far during the service, we had some power surges here over the past few weeks, and we're still learning what equipment still works and what equipment doesn't. We're learning some of that the hard way this morning. We got some stuff that's not working right. Our tech guys are amazing, by the way. Can we give a hand to our tech guys and girls? Because they are figuring out how to make it happen. So if you're watching online, bear with us. If you're in the room and stuff's popping and everything, storms happen. But here's why I think this happens today, okay? And I'm not trying to overly spiritualize anything, but I am preaching today about calm in the midst of chaos while everything melts down around us, right? And man, I don't know if it's like Satan's like, I'm gonna mess with your head while you preach or what, but you know, like we were supposed to have police directing traffic today and nobody was available this morning. And I mean, it's like all these little things are happening and it's just got me on edge right now. I feel like I drank too much coffee. I need to go home and take a nap, but I can't because it's my daughter's birthday party and my head's like, is the cake good? Should we put it in the refrigerator? Is the cake okay? Are we good? The party's good, right? That's where my head's at right now. So here's why I tell you this, okay? Because I think what we're going to talk about today is something that you'll be able to relate to because I'll bet you have days like the one that I'm having this morning. And so let me just go ahead and tell you right now, here's the beauty of what we're going to talk about today. God does not work in perfect moments. He doesn't just work when everything's right, okay? Even like today, here's what I've had to remind myself. God doesn't need lights and sound systems and fog and instruments and online mixes and cops at the intersection and all that stuff to work. You know how God works? Is he works in the hearts of his people and he works through his word. And that's why you see young people getting in the water and you see them making decisions to follow Jesus with their life. It's because he doesn't need this. Man, we serve, if that's the God we serve, if we serve a God that needs sound systems and lights and smoke and all that stuff to work, then that God's too small, and I don't want to follow that God. I want to follow a God who works whether you have that stuff or not, because he's working in bigger ways, and he's working behind the scenes, and he's working, just in his people. And so anyways, I'm going to stop preaching and start preaching, okay? So here we go. All right, so I'm thinking about this sermon this week, and I'm thinking about, just the busyness and the chaos and of life. And we were in Atlanta with Brian and Hannah at a conference this week, and like every road is like 6 lanes wide. Nobody can drive in the state of Georgia, and just craziness. I feel like I've been in a crazy week, right? And I'm thinking about it this week, and I was reminded of this time 2 years ago that Ashley and I were in England for my best friend Dean's wedding. Guys, this was like the best wedding ever, okay? He got married in a 10th century castle in the English countryside. I mean, come on. That's pretty sweet. Okay, so if you've ever seen Downton Abbey, it was like a scene out of Downton Abbey. So we flew to London. We spent a few days hanging out in London, and then a couple days before the wedding, we all carpooled up to a little town called Hereford, up 3 hours north in the English countryside, this quaint little town, right? And the castle was about a half an hour outside of town. And it was the most incredible, most beautiful wedding. Everything was just perfect. So they get married, and the next day we're flying home, and we had to be back at Heathrow in London by 10 o'clock for our flight. And remember, we're like 3.5 hours away, and this castle's so remote, there's no bus that drives by. And so we had to get a bus, or we had to get a ride from one of the groomsmen from the castle back to town so we could get a bus to drive us 3 hours back to London. And we had to do this at like 4 a.m. because we had to get back in time to get some COVID tests, because at that point, the states wouldn't even let us back in without a negative COVID test that day. And so we had to like rush back to Heathrow and get our tests and hope we were clear, and then we get on our flight and we get back to America. And so we had everything figured out. We got our bus tickets, everything was good. 4 a.m, we wake up, this other groomsman drives us to the bus station. We're standing there waiting for our bus, and right on time, bus pulls up, and I'm like, okay, finally, we're gonna get on our bus, I can breathe. And it took us about 3 blocks to figure out we got on the wrong bus. So I freak out. I pull on the chain, the bus stops, we run off. We didn't even say a word to the bus driver. She was kind of mean anyway, but it was 4 a.m, she's driving a bus. I wouldn't have been happy either. So we run off the bus. We're standing there with our suitcases in the middle of a city or a little village we don't know, in the middle of the English countryside at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm like, I don't know what we're gonna do, because for sure by now we've missed our bus. So I'm dragging my suitcase down the road. My wife's like 6 or 7 months pregnant at this point, and she's dragging her suitcase down the road. And I'm on my phone with my other hand trying to book new bus tickets or figure out like, okay, how are we gonna get out of here? What are we gonna do? And my phone doesn't work because we're in the middle of nowhere, right? And we get to this spot in the road where you can either go this way or you can go this way. And I couldn't remember which way we came from. And so my wife said go this way, I said go this way, I went this way, she came with me, I was wrong. She would probably tell you that part too, right? So we're walking down the road this way, and we get a little ways down this road, and then as I'm on my phone trying to book tickets, Ashley says, hey, I think that's our bus. And it was like a street over driving by, okay? Had already been to our bus stop. And so I said, oh no, and we grab our bags and we start running down this street, and I'm screaming at the bus at 4:30 a.m. in some town in England. People are leaning out their windows like, you know, the beginning of that scene from Beauty and the Beast where they're all like, what's going on down there? Except they're like, that guy's an idiot. We're running down the road, and somehow the bus driver heard us, and he stopped the bus in the middle of the road, and he let us on the bus. We got on the right bus, we got in our seats, he drove us to the airport, we made it just in time. I mean, they were about to pass us up for our test. Made it just in time, everything was good from that point on. I tipped that bus driver so much money. I don't even know how much money I gave him. I was just so thankful that he stopped in the road, right? So absolutely crazy, and it was one of the most panicked moments of my life. And I'm thinking about it this week because like now we can look back at that and we can laugh. But in the moment, that was awful. I did not know what we were going to do. It wouldn't have just messed up our day. It would have been multiple days, international travel during a pandemic. And man, now I can look back and laugh. But in the time, that was awful, right? And I tell you that story because while we can look back at that and laugh, I think it's kind of a good analogy for how a lot of us live our lives. Maybe you're like that situation where you were just doing your thing. You're just going through your life, just day after day after day. And then in a moment, a circumstance changed, or you made a mistake like we made a mistake, and all of a sudden the bottom drops out and everything just went crazy. And now you're in this whirlwind of chaos. Or maybe for you it was a little more gradual. You just, over time, barely noticeable, you took on a little more and a little more and a little more. Like you took on school, and with school comes homework, and so you had that, and then you got your first job. Then you bought your first car and you had bills to pay, so you needed that job, so you couldn't even like choose not to do it. You're paying for your car, and you got insurance and all that kind of stuff. And then you got college, so you take on college, you take on more homework, and then you get out of school and you start into your career, so you take that on, and then you meet somebody, and that girlfriend becomes your wife. And then you have a kid, and you have diapers, and you have preschool and dance recitals, so you take that on, and then you have all this, dance recitals, you have all these things to pay for, so you get a second job, and then your wife starts shopping on Amazon Prime, so you get a third job. And then, your kids grow up and then they have bills. You're trying to help them. You got to put them through college. Now you're thinking retirement. And so it's just more and more and more and more. And you get into this rhythm where over time, one day you wake up and you realize, oh my gosh, my life is chaos. Maybe it's more gradual like that. I just want to confess to you guys this morning. I've kind of already said this, but this is my greatest struggle. I hate slow. I'm not wired for it. I'm wired for fast. I am driven. I am go, 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 right? It drives my wife crazy. Come work for me here. It'll drive you crazy too. It probably drives everybody on my team crazy. I am not wired for slow. I pull up to a stoplight, and as I'm approaching it, I'm trying to figure out which car is going to go faster coming out of the stoplight so I know which lane to get in. And I know I'm not the only one. Who else does that? Come on. Okay. Or you go to the grocery store and you're looking at the lines and you're like, okay, that guy has 30 items in his cart and there's 2 people in this line and they both only have 5 items, but that lady looks like a talker, so I'll bet he's gonna get through faster, so I'm gonna bank on that, and you pick that lane, right? Do you ever have that conversation with yourself in your head at the grocery store? I listen to all of my podcasts and audiobooks on 125% speed because I don't have time to listen to slow talkers, I don't have time to listen to that book, so I speed it all up all the time, right? Do you do that? Like everything I do in my life, I just do a little faster than normal people, okay? And so hopefully you're not as dysfunctional as I am. But here's the deal. I bet if I could take you to coffee and if we could just sit down and have a chat, I'll bet you if I asked you if you're busier than you think you should be, and your answer would probably be yes. And I'll bet you that if I were to poll the room this morning, and if I were to ask you, if that's how you're feeling, you're just always overwhelmed and anxious and stressed, and you have all this stuff to do and not enough hours in the day to do it, I'll bet if I ask you, are you happy with how your life is going? That for many of you, your answer would be not really. But you don't know what to do about it because you got so much to do, and the pace of life is just, it's always accelerating. The pace of life is not steady. We gravitate toward busyness and faster and more, and it's just always driving us and pushing us. And before you know it, you're just running at a pace you could barely sustain if you can sustain it. And so if I were to ask you, are you happy with that? Your answer would probably be, no, I'm not. And again, I am with you in this, okay? I am with you in this because I am a fellow struggler. And so here's what I want to ask you this morning. What if, even as you look around at people, because this is what we do, we try to normalize it. So we look around and we're like, yeah, I'm super busy. This is stressing me out, but I'm not the only one. Everybody's living like this, right? This is normal. Guys, what if normal is broken? What if normal's broken? Actually, let me put it this way. What if the enemy of the life you want to live is the life that you are living now? What if the enemy of the life that you envy, the life that you dream of, the life that you wish for, what if the enemy of that life is the life that you are choosing to live today? You ever think about that? That's why we're in the middle of this message series called A Better Way. It's because we're trying to look at not just what Jesus taught, but at how he lived and how he loved people and how he conducted himself and how he interacted. And we're trying to figure out, how can I live a better story? How can I live a better way? Because I can see how Jesus lived. And if his way is better than my way, I want to live more like Jesus. Think about the way he lived, right? He had a 3-year ministry, and think about everything he accomplished in that 3 years. He recruits this ragtag team of people, and he trains them up into this team that would launch a momentum movement, a force that would change the world. He was hated by the Pharisees. He endured that. He was tempted by the devil himself. He endured that. He taught the word of God fearlessly. He fulfilled 351 Old Testament prophecies in 3 years. He was a busy guy. He had a lot to do. But you know something? The more I look at Jesus' life, he was never rushed. There's no record in Scripture of Jesus running or jogging or, like speed walking like you do at the YMCA. Like there's no record of Jesus ever doing that. There's no record of Jesus telling his disciples, all right, guys, let's go. We got to pick up the pace a little bit. We were supposed to be in Jerusalem 2 hours ago. Let's get on the move here, right? He just didn't do that. It was never rushed. I want to show you a phrase from a little verse in Mark. You don't have to turn there. Stay in Matthew 11 if your Bible's open, but we'll put this on the screen. This is Mark 2:14. I just want to show you this little phrase. Check this out. It just says, as Jesus walked along. You see that over and over and over in the Gospels as you read Jesus' story and as you see the way that he lived, as he walked along, as he traveled, as he walked along. And these are the moments where he interacts with people and he heals people and he ministers to people. It's not as he ran, not as he jogged, not as he sprinted, it's as he walked along. And in this verse it says, as Jesus walked along, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting in the tax collector's booth. And Jesus said to him, follow me. And Levi got up and he followed Jesus. And I'm thinking about Levi this week and I'm like, man, if Jesus invited Levi to follow him and Jesus lived an unrushed life, then Levi must have had to learn how to live an unrushed life too. Because he's following Jesus, right? He's literally following him. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I thought about you and about me. And I thought, if we are following Jesus, then shouldn't we be learning to live an unrushed life too? I mean, if we're truly following Jesus and following in his footsteps, following along and learning to live the way that he lived and to love the way that he loved, then shouldn't we be learning to live an unrushed life too? I mean, by the way, I live a very different life than what Jesus did in this way. And maybe you do too. So if you find yourself more like me and Ashley in the English countryside, scrambling, trying to figure out what to do in this whirlwind, if that sounds more like your life, then Jesus has an invitation for you this morning. And it's found in Matthew 11 in a little passage, verses 28 through 30. And you have it in your translation, whatever you have, whatever you use. Usually when I preach, I use the New International Version because that's what most people use. But I want to read this passage to you this morning from a version of the Bible called The Message. This was written by a guy named Eugene Peterson, who didn't set out to translate the Bible. He set out, this is what we would call a transliteration. He just took what's in the Bible and he put it in the simplest, most modern language he could think to put. Now, by the way, this guy's brilliant. He had multiple doctorates in theology and philosophy and languages and biblical history. He's an absolute genius, okay? But he just said, I want a version of the Bible that my kids will understand. And so he started to write The Message. And I want you to listen to how he writes this passage in Matthew 28 or Matthew 11. In fact, I want to do something I don't typically ask you to do, and this might feel a little weird to you if you're new around here, so you don't have to do this, but I just want to encourage you for just a moment right now as I read these verses, would you just close your eyes? Just close your eyes. Let me read this invitation from Jesus, because this is what he invites you to. He says, are you tired? Are you worn out? Burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you will recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. So walk with me and work with me and learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you, but keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. You can open your eyes. Man, let me ask you, doesn't that sound better than what we do? I mean, I'll have people sometimes ask me, I don't get it, what's the point of following Jesus? And let me tell you, if that's all you get out of it, it is worth the price of admission. Because that is living. And he says, get away with me. And I love this. He says, you'll recover your life, the life that you are losing moment by moment by moment, because you're running so fast all the time. And you're just hustling. And you're trying to get the next thing done, or get to the next step, or accomplish the next goal, or do the next thing. And you don't want to miss out on anything. And Jesus is like, you are missing your life moment by moment by moment. And if you would just learn to walk with me, to follow in my footsteps, man, you would recover your life. Oh my gosh, like guys, it changes everything. It changes everything. I want you to just think about the way that he lived, okay? His mission was to give up his life to save the world. It's a big mission. So when he decides it's time to get going, what's he do? He calls his disciples together and says, guys, what's the agenda? Where are we going to be? Appointments, who am I meeting with first? Who am I healing? Where am I going? What am I teaching this day? Right? And he he doesn't do that at all. He's not getting a plan together. You know the first thing Jesus did? Took a sabbatical. 6 weeks in the wilderness alone with God. Praying, fasting, being silent. He did that first. He didn't wait till he was burned out and then try to heal. He was proactive. He did that first. And in that time, his identity in the Father was just solidified. And then he started into his mission. I mean, I look at that and I'm like, man, I could learn some things from that, right? I look at encounters like this. Like one day, this guy named Jairus, who's a really important man, comes along. And Jairus' daughter, his little girl's sick. In fact, she's going to die. And Jairus knows it. And he knows that her only hope is Jesus. Now, I can put myself in Jairus' shoes real easy because I have a couple little girls. And so when I read this story, I try to put myself in that frame of mind and I think, okay, if my little girl was dying, what would I do to save her life? And the answer is absolutely anything. I would find anyone, I would travel anywhere, I would beg anyone, I would pay anything, I would sell it, I would give it all away, I would bust through security, nobody would stop me, I would do anything, I would be at the end of my rope to save my daughter's life. That's the guy who he doesn't come to Jesus, hey, do you have a second? My daughter, she's got some stuff going on. Do you have some time? He comes to Jesus and he's like, Jesus, please. He falls to his knees. My little girl's not going to make it through the night, and I need you to come right now because I know you can save her. Jesus, please, can you come with me? And you know what Jesus' response was? Yeah, I'll get there. And I'm like, if I'm Jairus, I'm ticked. You'll get what? I don't have that kind of time. I need you to come right now. Like, can we run? I'll get a chariot. What do you need, Jesus? Let's go, right? Jesus is like, oh, I'll get there. And so he begins to walk. And as he's walking, he comes across this woman who's been sick for years and years. And she stops him. And what's Jesus do? Sorry, ma'am, I'm on my way to heal a little girl. I got to save her life. I'll catch you on my way home. That's what I would have done. But Jesus stops and he gives this woman his undivided attention. Meanwhile, I picture Jairus about a block down the street going, are you kidding me? And Jesus is just hanging out with this woman. He takes time and he talks to her and he heals her. Meanwhile, the little girl dies. My heart breaks when I read that. Because can you imagine the frame of mind that this father is in? He got his hopes up because Jesus is coming, a little slow, but he's coming, and then he stops. And he's just like, I'd be going, did you forget? You don't care? But you know what? Jesus, in that moment, said, hey, time is in my hands. And he heals the girl. He brings her back to life. It's incredible. I look at that, and I'm like, man, I could learn some things from that. Like, if Jesus in that kind of moment can take time for somebody, what excuse do I have? I mean, come on. Look at his mode of transportation. He picked a donkey. He's the Son of God. He can pick any animal he wants. If I'm Jesus, I'm picking a horse, and a fast one, right? He picks a donkey. Donkeys don't run, they walk. You never see Eeyore run a red light. Even that. I just don't get it. He's just never in a hurry. He never lived a rushed life. And it just makes me think, if Jesus never rushed and we are following Jesus, then shouldn't we be learning to live an unrushed life too? Why do we rush? I mean, I'm just a preacher. I'm not a counselor. I have theories on this. For some of us, I think we're afraid of stillness and silence. We don't want to be alone with ourselves. For some of us, I think we're afraid to miss out on things. For most of us, I think we're either running from something or running towards something. Like, if I could just tell you, for me, if I'm going to analyze it, I think I'm running from insignificance and running toward acceptance. Just a little peek into my mind. If I'm going to be real transparent with you, I think I'm running from insignificance and I'm running toward acceptance. I don't know what you're running from. Maybe you're running from a past failure, a mistake. Maybe you're running from a wrong career move. Maybe you're running from abuse. Maybe you're running from an addiction or neglect. Or maybe you're running to something. You have a goal and you're running to that thing. Maybe you're running toward marriage, or you're running toward having a family, or you're running toward that next step in your career, or you're running toward image, or you're running toward popularity, or you're running toward fame, or whatever it is. You're running from something, or you're running to something. And you know the problem is, for many of us, we just run and run and run and run until we eventually get that life we're chasing, and it still leaves us feeling empty. Fulfillment's not found in any of that stuff. And so if the greatest enemy to the life you want to live is the life you're actually choosing right now, let me just get up in your business for just a second and say this. The answer is not more time. The answer is making time for what matters. More time, you'll just fill it with more stuff. The answer is making time for what matters. I'm going to prove this to you. I'll give you 2 quick examples. Social media and television. Quick question, how many of you are on any form of social media? Anything at all? Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Okay, if you're old and you still have MySpace, that's okay. If you're a nerd and you're really into your LinkedIn profile, whatever works for you, okay, wherever you connect. How much time do you think the average person spends on social media in a year? You guess? I'm gonna make you feel bad. 706 hours on social media in 1 year. I like to compare things. That's how I make it make sense in my mind. So if the average workday is 8 hours, that means you will spend 4.5 months of working hours on social media this year if you're average. And the good news is some of you are way above average, baby. You're achievers. So let that sink in. Let's talk about TV because it's worse. The average American will spend 1,692 hours watching TV this year. Let me give you a comparison on this one. If you live to the average life expectancy in the United States of 78 years, that means that by that time you will have spent 15 years of your life watching TV. I'm just going to let that sink in. Think about what you could do with that time. With 15 years of your life, just do this, okay? Sociologists tell us we change every 7 years. Your preferences, your tastes, even your taste buds. Like you become a kind of a new person in a lot of ways every 7 years. So let's just take 7 years. If you take 1,692 hours a year over 7 years, that's just shy of 12,000 hours. What could you do with that kind of time? Man, you work in $10 an hour, you can make $120,000. You could get your undergrad degree and your graduate degree. Malcolm Gladwell says you could become a concert pianist or a professional golfer in 10,000 hours of practice. You could memorize the whole New Testament. You get your pilot's license. I could just keep going and going with 12,000 hours, seriously? But think about what you could do with that time invested in the relationships in your life. Think about if you would take that time and invest it in your marriage. Maybe the person that you're running from or they're running from you, maybe you wouldn't be running anymore. If you just did less of this, and by the way, I'm guilty. You want to say amen right now? Amen. She said amen. If you did less of this and just more time connected, think about your kids, man. Think about that amount of time poured into relationships with your kids. You'd have a relationship with your kids that most people only dream of. Think about if you spent put this in perspective. 1,692 hours a year you're going to spend watching TV. About 52 to 60 hours a year you'll spend at church. And you wonder why you're depressed all the time and you don't feel more connected to God. Probably because you're watching CNN or Fox News or MSNBC and you're getting yourself all depressed for 1,700 hours a year. That's a soapbox, I'm done. So what do you do? What do you do? If I've talked you into it, I've convinced you there's a problem. We built the tension. I'd say we've done a good job of that this morning. And you're like, what do I do with this? How do I get better? How do I make a change? I don't want that to be my life. Here's the answer. You ready? I don't know. I told you, I wrestle with this too. I don't have the answers. Here's what I did. I just went back to the basics, all right? Who is God? And the answer is God is love. It's not just what he does, it's who he is. And so if the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and the second, Jesus says is like it, you should love your neighbor as you love yourself, then that tells me that at the core of who I am as a follower of Jesus, my job is to love God and be loved by God and love other people on his behalf. And there's an author named John Mark Comer who wrote a phenomenal book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And in that book, he said something so simple yet so profound. He said, hurry is incompatible with love. Here's why. Because in 1 Corinthians 13, the very first description we see for love is patient. It takes time. And hurry doesn't have time. Love is incompatible with hurry. And so what I want to do is I just want to share a prayer with you that I've been praying. Just one prayer. It's very simple. And I pray this every single morning. If it's my morning cup of coffee or before I read my Bible app in the morning or when I come to work before I get into my day, I've been praying this prayer every morning. It's just this. It's just, God, help me walk slowly enough today to experience Jesus fully and love people deeply. That's it. God, help me walk slowly enough today to experience Jesus fully and love people deeply. God, I got a big day today. I got a lot of meetings. I got a lot of things to do. Help me walk slowly enough in that to experience Jesus fully and to love people deeply. Now, let me tell you something. I don't know what will happen in your life if you start praying that prayer, but let me tell you what God's doing in my life. First of all, he's teaching me to be present in the moment because I've realized that I'm pretty good at being physically in a place but mentally somewhere else. And I'm worst at that when I'm home with my family. And so you know what I'm trying to get better at? And I've got a long way to go. But I'm trying to get better at just leaving my phone off to the side, not paying attention to it. I'm trying to get better at just being present with whoever I'm with, my family or people here, whatever, like just trying to be present. Another thing God's teaching me is he's teaching me to determine what matters and to eliminate the things that don't. And that means I say no to some things so I can say yes to other things. And you know what? We're really bad at that in our culture. I don't know what you love to do, like gardening or hot yoga or summer softball rec league. I don't know. Pick a thing. Maybe it's like your summer softball league, you just love that so much. You're one of those people that's just, you're good at it. You enjoy it. It's a good outlet, right? But you got kids at home and that night is like the night you could be home with your family. So maybe you need to say no to that this year. You say no to one thing so you can say yes to a better thing. And it doesn't mean it's no forever. It just means in a season, there's a better thing. Gosh, you know when this got really like, sorry, camera guys. About 2 weeks before Christmas, I'm sitting in the living room. I'm in full-on Christmas panic mode because Christmas Eve's a pretty big deal if you're a pastor. So I'm like, I got to write the perfect talk so people come to Jesus. It'll be great. I'm worried about all the technical stuff. Is anybody going to show up? You know? And so I'm sitting in the living room one night. I had a basketball game on TV. I had my laptop on the coffee table in front of me. I had my iPad next to it. I had some pages and notes in front of me. And as I'm sitting there doing this at about 7 o'clock in the evening, my little girl, Ellie, she's 3, she comes walking up to me with her little blankie in her hand and her doll. And she says, Daddy, will you play dollies with me? We have this little playroom next to our living room. And I kind of glanced at her and I said, Ellie, I got a whole lot of stuff I got to do right now, baby. I'm sorry. I'll play with you tomorrow, okay? She just hung her head and walked away and said, okay, Daddy. And you know what hurt the most? She was used to it. And I thought, like, guys, something in me broke in that moment. And I just had this thought, like, one day, not long from now, because I'm going to blink and it's going to be gone, and I'm going to be sitting there going, man, I wish she'd spend a little time with me. So I was like, I'm not doing it again. It's not like I was perfect overnight, okay? It's not cold turkey. But if she comes and asks me to play dolls with her, man, I want to go play dolls with her because I don't want to miss that stuff. And see, the other thing that God is teaching me as I pray this prayer is to recognize his presence and hear his voice, and he's doing that through my little girl. You want to know why this matters so much to Jesus? Is because he sees you. And he sees how hectic your life is. And he sees how stressed you are. And he sees the anxiety. He sees how packed your calendar is. He sees that you don't have any family time. He sees that you have excuses for everything. He sees how miserable you are, even if you've convinced yourself it's normal. And Jesus is saying, I love you so much. This is not the life I want you to live. It should be so much better than this. This isn't the life that I've created you for. I don't want you to be miserable. I don't want you to miss it. Your life is being robbed from you. And Jesus says, if you would just learn to walk with me, you could recover your life. Jesus, as he walked every single day, you know what he was doing? One step at a time, one day at a time, he was walking toward the cross, where he ultimately laid his life down for you and for me. And so what that means is that if you are following Jesus, you are taking one step at a time, one day at a time toward the cross to lay your life down for your friends. In fact, John chapter 15, Jesus says it this way, my command is this, love each other as I've loved you. Because greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Guys, what if the way that we lay our lives down in America, in Canton, Ohio, in 2023 is you just shut your phone off and you hang out with your family? Or what if the way that you lay your life down is you say no to one thing so you can say yes to a better thing? And you don't miss out on the better thing because you wasted your time on social media or TV or YouTube or whatever else is going on in your life. You say no to something so you can say yes to something that matters. What if that is the way that you lay your life down? That's what it means, I think, in this case, to take one step toward the cross every single day. So I challenge you to pray that prayer. Just commit to 1 week. Pray it every morning. God, help me to walk slowly enough today to experience Jesus fully and love people deeply. That's it. Because you know what will happen as you do is you'll find out that God's going to use you in different ways just because you're more available and you're present. And as that happens, it is so fulfilling, and you'll feel that sense of purpose in your life that you haven't felt before, that you're looking for. You'll start to feel it, and it just begins as you start taking steps toward the cross in this area of your life. So we're going to take communion together. If you have the communion elements, or if you're watching online or somewhere else, hopefully maybe you could grab some crackers and some juice or some bread or something and participate in communion wherever you are. And here's what I want you to do as we take communion together is I just want you to hold those elements and I just want you to look at them. And before you take them, consider what it looked like for Jesus to lay his life down for you, and then ask him for the strength to lay your life down for whoever it is that he's put in your path and he's calling you to love, because that's the way that you do it. And as we do this, I did this in first service. This is a little different too, but Bob, I'm going to have the music stop, okay? And then we're just going to let it be silent in this room. And I want you to take a second in silence and just pray that prayer. God, help me to walk slowly enough today to experience Jesus fully and to love people deeply. Teach me to do that like you do that. Pray that prayer. And in just a minute, I'll pray. We'll sing one more song and we'll close out.